so empty. The only thing I can see is my own silhouette. I'm getting
So the Poco M2 Pro is a really popular smartphone right now, and not for the reasons the brand might have hoped it to be. Still, in its own right, the M2 Pro is a fantastic smartphone, as was rightfully pointed out by Irshad in his full review. Now, in that video, a lot of you guys actually wanted us to compare this phone to the Moto One Fusion Plus, as their 6GB 128GB storage variants are priced about the same. So that's exactly what I'll be doing in this video. Today I'll be comparing the Moto One Fusion Plus to the Poco M2 Pro end to end to see which one is more deserving of your money. But guys, before we get on with the video, make sure to hit the bell icon and subscribe to our YouTube channel if you haven't already, so that you don't miss out on any quality tech content that we put out. Now that you've done that, let's get on with the full comparison of the Moto One Fusion Plus and the Poco M2 Pro. Now this is going to be the most contentious topic of this entire comparison, so let's just get this out of the way first. Now between these two smartphones, I like the looks of the Poco M2 Pro more. I know, it is a rebranded Redmi Note 9 Pro. In fact, I have one here, and yes, it is a carbon copy of the smartphone, no two ways about it. But all the internet trolling aside, you have to agree that the Redmi Note 9 Pro and in extension the Poco M2 Pro are two of the best looking phones in the mid-range segment. The use of glass in construction along with the smartphone's two-tone finish and a sleeker profile easily give it a more premium in-hand feel as compared to the One Fusion Plus. See, if you don't mind getting a phone that looks exactly, well, I'm not going to say exactly because, well, the logo and the colors are different. So, similar. If you don't mind getting a phone that is similar looking to a different phone from a totally different company, then go for the Poco M2 Pro. However, if you want something that looks unique, then the white colorway of the Moto One Fusion Plus is the way to go. That finish plus the interestingly shaped camera module will make sure that your phone stands out. It won't feel as luxurious owing to its all plastic build, but it will get the job done. When it comes to ergonomics, while both the phones weigh almost the same, the One Fusion Plus is a tad thicker at 9.6mm compared to the Poco M2 Pro, which measures in at 8.6mm. Now, from my experience of using the two phones, I would say that the Poco M2 Pro is more manageable to use with one hand, as with the One Fusion Plus, you'll almost always have to use two hands. That being said, the M2 Pro is more slippery, so you might want to use the bundled case that comes with it. Now, while the One Fusion Plus isn't as slippery, it does come with a pop-up selfie camera, so don't take any chances there either. Lastly, unlike the M2 Pro, the One Fusion Plus doesn't come with a dedicated card slot, so you'll have to compromise on connectivity if you plan on expanding the phone storage. But the typing experience on the phone is the best in the business thanks to the handset's excellent haptic motors. The M2 Pro isn't all that bad either, but between the two, I found myself making fewer typos on the One Fusion Plus. You also get a dedicated Google Assistant key with the One Fusion Plus, which comes in clutch for a variety of different tasks. Trust me, if you get the One Fusion Plus, make use of this button as it cuts down steps to do something greatly. Now this section is a very easy win for the Poco M2 Pro. Firstly, the smartphone offers a side-mounted capacitive fingerprint sensor which is faster to unlock the phone and has been positioned in a more convenient spot as compared to the rear-mount fingerprint sensor on the One Fusion Plus. Also, the M2 Pro comes with facial recognition, which the One Fusion Plus doesn't. Now, if your work requires you to go out, then this will be a moot point since I'm assuming you'd be wearing a mask most of the time, and the facial recognition on most phones doesn't play nice with that. Regardless, the M2 Pro is going to get you into your home screen quicker. As for the sensors, both the phones come with all the necessary sensors. However, the M2 Pro edges in front owing to the presence of an electronic compass. Now, this sensor is the bane of the One Fusion Plus's existence, as it doesn't let the phone tell a user their orientation when using apps like Google Maps. Moto should have really thought about omitting this sensor, because the one thing, I've done a lot of content on the Moto One Fusion Plus, and the one comment that is just on every single video is that I love the Moto One Fusion Plus, it's a great smartphone for me, but because it does not come with a magnetometer, I cannot buy it because that's just a deal breaker for me. So yeah, Moto, do better next time. Now both the smartphones that I have here today offer a Full HD Plus LCD display, but the one on the One Fusion Plus is slightly better for media consumption for three reasons. Firstly, there's no notch here thanks to the pop-up selfie camera, so when you're watching a video, there won't be a hole in the screen staring you down. Secondly, the display on the One Fusion Plus is more color accurate as it makes use of the DCI-P3 color space, so if you want to view the content as is, this is a better screen for that. Thirdly, and this is my favorite, the One Fusion Plus comes with the best peak display in existence, allowing you to get detailed insights into your notifications without unlocking the phone. Now the display on the M2 Pro has its merits too. Firstly, it's slightly brighter at 480 nits, whereas the One Fusion Plus's screen maxes out at 450 nits. Secondly, at 6.67 inches, it is bigger than the 6.5 inch screen on the One Fusion Plus 2, so you do get more screen real estate with the M2 Pro. But everything considered, I'd pick the panel on the One Fusion Plus here. Some last bits of information about the two phones' respective screens. They're both White1L1 certified, and while the One Fusion Plus also comes with HDR10 certification, Netflix app says otherwise. And even without HDR10 certification, the M2 Pro can play videos on YouTube in HDR just like the One Fusion Plus. Also, per the Touch Multitest app, the display on the Poco M2 Pro is more responsive and it netted 180 touch samples per second, whereas the One Fusion Plus's screen maxed out at 120 touch samples per second. Now, in terms of display protection, the Moto One Fusion Plus actually comes with some sort of a display protection, but it's not from Corning and the brand is not specifying the vendor to me. Now, as for the Poco M2 Pro, this phone comes with a triple layer of Corning Gorilla Glass version 5, which means that you will get Gorilla Glass version 5 on the back, on the front, and on the smartphone's camera module. So in the longer run, this is a much safer bet. Now you already know the specs, but for those who don't know, this should get you up to speed. So the Moto One Fusion Plus is backed by Qualcomm's Snapdragon 730G processor, which works alongside 128GB of UFS 2.1 storage and 6GB of RAM. The M2 Pro, on the other hand, comes in multiple RAM and storage variants, but the model I'll be testing today comes with 4GB of RAM and 64GB of onboard memory. Now bear in mind that the 6GB RAM variant of the phone costs 500 rupees less compared to the One Fusion Plus. The processor on offer here is Qualcomm's Snapdragon 720G chipset, which isn't all that inferior when compared to the 730G. In fact, if synthetic tests are anything to go by, then the 720G actually outperforms the 730G, which can be attributed to the higher clock speeds on the former's A76 cores. So be it Antutu or Geekbench 5, the 720G toting Poco M2 Pro nets a higher score. Furthermore, the gaming performance of the two SoCs is about the same, and both the phones manage to run PUBG at HD and high or smooth and ultra settings. Now my gaming experience was equally enjoyable on both the devices, but I did notice that the One Fusion Plus got slightly warmer to the touch. In day-to-day usage, the two phones were neck and neck, and once again, the One Fusion Plus felt a tad smoother when jumping in and out of apps, but I'm going to chalk that up to the faster animations on the phone. All said and done, in terms of performance, there's no clear winner here, so now let's talk about the audio setup on board. Here, the One Fusion Plus takes back the lead as it offers a louder, richer mono speaker at the bottom. The speaker on the M2 Pro is good for the price too, and it gets reasonably loud as well, but the audio output, especially the bass, is quite flat and bland. The audio performance from the headphone jack, however, is on par on both the phones. My go-to testing setup involved listening to lossless music using PowerAmp Media Player, and one more quad driver earphones netted similarly pleasing results on both the handsets. As for call quality, both the phones are on par with one another here too. I didn't notice any flakiness in the caller's voice, and my voice was relayed clearly over to the other end too. I tested both the smartphones on Airtel's postpaid connection, and internet connectivity wise, I got some weird results here. Now while the Moto One Fusion Plus showed slower download speeds as compared to the M2 Pro, it had much faster upload speeds. Now Airtel service is giving me some trouble, but of all the smartphones that I've tested in the last few weeks or so, the Moto One Fusion Plus's download speeds have always been lower than the competition. So even when I was comparing it to the Samsung Galaxy M31 and now with Poco M2 Pro, so yeah, this phone's download speeds are just not as good as what I get on other smartphones. Well, if you look back at the screenshots, then you'll see that it's working fine for me on both the phones. So the camera specs for both of these smartphones will be on your screen right now, so take a gander.
Ready to explore right up in the sky. I need you to listen.
Done? Alright, great. Now, the one thing that you'll notice in this entire camera comparison is that while the Poco M2 Pro clicked images with a slightly cooler tone, the Moto One Fusion Plus actually clicked really authentic, truer to life images. For example, if you look at the shot of the pink flowers, then here you'll notice that at a closer crop, not only did the One Fusion Plus capture more details as is evident by the mud next to the bricks, but it also had significantly less noise as compared to the image from the Poco M2 Pro. Now, if you zoom into the flowers, you'll notice considerable graininess on the M2 Pro shot, whereas the image from the One Fusion Plus is as sharp as they get. Same goes for the shot of the decorative piece in my garden. At a much closer crop, the details and the colors are much better on the One Fusion Plus as compared to the Poco M2 Pro. Now, in this next shot, you'll notice that the One Fusion Plus has significantly better dynamic range as it brought out the details from both the highlights as well as the shadows and presented a much more appealing scene. While you can make out the green color on the tree leaves on the top left and the shrub at the center on the One Fusion Plus, the M2 Pro shot is a dark mess. Also, notice how the sky appears a vivid shade of blue on the M2 Pro's photo? Yes, that's not how the scene looked. I was not impressed with the high-res shot on either, mind you. While the Moto One Fusion Plus edged out slightly in terms of details, both the photos exhibited blown out details and highlights at the rightmost corner. Still, between the two, the One Fusion Plus's shot is more presentable as there is less noise if you zoom into the center and there's more detailing present on the bark of the tree too. I have said this numerous times before, the wide-angle camera on the One Fusion Plus is just not very good. The M2 Pro sensor is actually better and clicks a sharper image, which is evident if you zoom into the center or the bushes on the left. On the flip side, macro shots from the One Fusion Plus turned out much better with better colors, dynamic range and details. Zooming into the tip of the flower, you'll notice how the M2 Pro shot has a lot of noise and not a lot of details as compared to the One Fusion Plus's photo. Selfies, however, net a completely different result, and the photos that I took with the Poco M2 Pro were significantly better than the selfies that I took with the Moto One Fusion Plus. At a closer crop, you'll notice two things. Firstly, both the selfies are over sharpened, and secondly, the one from the One Fusion Plus is playing up the effects a bit more as it has added a bronzish texture to my skin. Now, that's not the case with the M2 Pro. Also, if you look at the sky in the background, then you'll find better resolution from the M2 Pro's camera there. The photos from the Moto One Fusion Plus, however, always resulted in overexposed highlights. Portrait selfies from the M2 Pro were slightly more appealing too, as the blur effect was cleaner around the edges of my shirt and the skin tone was once again much more natural. Now, coming to the low light photos, the One Fusion Plus loses this bout to the Poco M2 Pro. With the night mode disabled, the M2 Pro outputted a brighter scene with better visibility of the surroundings. Now, enabling the night mode nets better details on both the phones. However, the photo from the M2 Pro is brighter and it also resolves the darker parts better too, which can be seen if you zoom into the row of pink flowers which have no definition in the One Fusion Plus's shot, albeit look much nicer on the M2 Pro's photo. Same goes for the low light selfies, mind you. With the screen flash off, both the phones fail to capture a presentable image. However, with the feature turned on, you'll notice that the flash throw on the M2 Pro's photo is wider, which allows the phone to capture more information from the scene behind me, whereas the photo from the One Fusion Plus has a darkened background. Now, when it comes to videos, the One Fusion Plus's 1080p 60fps clip is a clear winner in my books. While there are instances of focus jumping, the footage shot from the phone is a lot more stable as compared to what you get with the M2 Pro. Even though the audio output and the overall colors look nicer on the M2 Pro's video, I'll have to go with the One Fusion Plus here. Okay guys, so these are the video samples from the Poco M2 Pro and the Moto One Fusion Plus. So the footage from the One Fusion Plus will be on the left, whereas the one from the Poco M2 Pro will be on the right. Now, these videos are being recorded in 1080p 60fps. So do let me know how the stability is on both of these clips in the comments below. And also, what do you think of the audio captured by the built-in microphone of both these smartphones? So do let me know that as So things get quite interesting in the battery department, and both the smartphones that I have here today come with a 5000 mAh battery. Now, if you also factor in the same 8nm processor that's powering these two phones and almost similarly spec'd displays, you should expect similar battery lives from these two phones, and in our testing that was consistent and we got about 7 to 8 hours of screen on time with both these handsets. However, the M2 Pro charges much quicker thanks to the bundled 33-watt charger, and the device took only 1.5 hours to hit 100%. The One Fusion Plus will make you wait much longer, and it takes 2.5 hours, a little more than that actually, to charge completely, as it only comes with an 18-watt brick. As for software, well, the only thing new you get with the M2 Pro over say the Redmi Note 9 Pro is a launcher and no ads. It's still running MIUI version 11, so if you're coming from a phone with MIUI, you'll feel right at home here. The One Fusion Plus, on the other hand, takes a cleaner approach and doesn't offer many frills with its software, which I personally like more. Plus, you also get the handy Moto actions, which I will rave about in every video of the One Fusion Plus I make because they're just that good. Looks aside, the M2 Pro is actually running on the June security patch from Google, whereas the One Fusion Plus is still on the April security patch. Moto really needs to send out updates in a timely manner, and this is something the company has struggled with for a lot of years. Moving on, both the phones come with support for Google's Project Treble, and they also come with level 3 support for Cam 2 API, meaning you can use all features of a Gcam port on both the phones. Now, before I talk about the verdict, I just want to address some privacy concerns surrounding the Poco M2 Pro. Now, I saw a lot of videos online which said that the Poco M2 Pro actually comes with the Hello app, which is banned by the government, and yeah, it does. But guys, a phone is conceptualized and designed months before its actual launch, and the Poco's India team has already stated that they're working to fix this. I'm not siding with Poco here, just trying to tell you both sides of the story. Also, as a general rule of thumb, always uninstall all the apps that come preloaded with the smartphone. Now obviously, if you're buying something like the One Fusion Plus, then you won't have to deal with that headache. But if you're buying something like the Poco M2 Pro, then it's always good practice to uninstall any app that you're not going to use that comes preloaded with the phone. So between these two smartphones, which one should you buy? Well, if you want the more affordable option, then obviously you'll have to go with the Poco M2 Pro, because this does start at a much lower price point as compared to the One Fusion Plus. But if you are comparing the 6GB RAM variants of these two phones, then I'll say get the Poco M2 Pro if you want a stylish, albeit rebranded design, a much better selfie camera, and if you want much faster wired charging. Now, if you want a cleaner software experience or just a more color accurate display, or even if you click a lot of photos with the rear camera, then I'd say go with the Moto One Fusion Plus. Now, as far as the performance is concerned, if you just want a smartphone, a good looking phone that's going to play games, then you could go with either of these two smartphones, because the performance is absolutely the same on these two phones. But guys, that wraps up this in-depth comparison between the Poco M2 Pro and the Moto One Fusion Plus from my end. Do let me know in the comments below which of these two smartphones would you buy. And as always, if you enjoyed this video, do give us a big thumbs up and share it with your friends. Until next time, this is Prateek from Mr. Phone signing off.
We will